One of the plants that really remind me of growing up in South Africa is Tradescantia. I remember having these lovely plants in my garden and going out and picking them like flowers to make more indoor plants. I have recently added a few varieties of Tradescantia to my houseplant collection. I really struggled to pick my favourite houseplant, but if I had to narrow it down to my top 10 or maybe even my top 5, Tradescantia would be on top of my list. They are super easy, they add beautiful colours, they can trail, and I'm going to show you my trailing collection. They propagate really well, and they are just an easy, low maintenance plant to have in a bright space. In this video, I'm going to be sharing my Tradescantia collection with you. I'll also share how I keep my Tradescantia happy. I also want to do a little experiment today. Typically when I propagate my plants, and Tradescantia included, I cut the stem and pop it into water to grow roots. I personally like to grow roots wherever I can before potting plants on into soil. However, I know that you can pot Tradescantia cuttings directly into soil, and supposedly that is creating a stronger plant than if you cut the stem, pop it in water to grow roots, and then pot it on. So today I'm going to do a bit of an experiment. I'm going to take 2 cuttings of one of my Tradescantia. I'm going to let that cut heal, and one will go into water, one will go directly into soil. I'll show you afterwards, once the plants have grown a little bit, in a different video, what the results are and which plant is looking the healthiest. So there's a lot to pack into one video, so let's get going. Before I do my experiment and tell you how I keep my Tradescantia happy, let me show you the different varieties that I have in my collection. First up is my Tradescantia Brightness. I love this plant. I mean, it's just a plain green, slightly white, stripy plant, but it adds such an effect to my plant room, and it's grown so much since I've had it. It's just finished flowering and it's produced some beautiful white flowers, some dead leaves I need to take off here, but I absolutely love this, and mixed in with my other Tradescantia that are completely different colours, which I'll show you in a minute, this just adds such a cool jungle vibe and the green colour to my plant room. Love these plants, super easy, but let me go through my whole collection and then I'll share how I care for them. Next up is my Tradescantia Nanook. Love the colour on these plants, and I don't know if you've seen my previous videos before, but I've got a school project near where I live where I donate 5 plants to a local school every month for their wellbeing room, for students who are going through a tricky time with their mental health, who spend time in the wellbeing room to enjoy a bit of nature and greenery in this space. Tradescantia Nanook is one that I always propagate and give on to schools because of the colour. It's such a beautiful sensory element to see these colours. The leaves are kind of velvety to touch as well, so it's got a nice sensory feel to it, and they just grow so easily with the right light. I say with the right light because I have a Tradescantia Nanook over here, which I'll show you. It's been in a slightly darker space, and you can see the effect that the darker space has on this plant. Let me grab it. This plant is still growing, but it's a little bit leggy, it's a little bit dry as well. It's been in a bit of a dark corner and the soil is really dry, so it's completely my fault that I have neglected this plant a little bit. I need to repot it and just pop it in a bright spot. The colour has slightly faded as well, and I always find that the colour fades if it's not had the right light. I'll talk about light in a minute, but you can see this plant is slightly unhappy. I like to keep it real and show you that not all of my plants are perfect. There are some brown crispy tips and leaves. It's got a little bit leggy, but I know what the problem is. I know it needs a drink. it needs a bright spot, and just remove all these leaves just to give it a bit of TLC, which I will do soon. The next one is my purple heart Tradescantia. This one's got a bit of a story to it because about 2 months ago it was my birthday, and we drove through our village, and there's a lady that sells plant cuttings from her main plants in a little wooden hut outside her house, just a few doors up from where I live. So we drove past and I said, oh, there's a lovely plant. And my boys knew which one I meant because I said it's a lovely purple plant. And the next day they went out on their bikes and got this lovely Tradescantia to surprise me for my birthday. It's grown loads since I've had it, even in a couple of months. It's got such a special place on my plant shelf because my boys got it for me, but also it's super easy. Love the colour on it. This also really reminds me of my home in South Africa because I had these lovely plants in my garden, as well as a Tradescantia zebrina, which I'll show you in a minute. But love them. I love how much they're growing, and they're just continually growing even though we're moving into autumn and plants are supposed to go dormant. However, this is growing, and I'm sure, no doubt, I'm going to have to pop it in a bigger pot. It's already had a bigger pot since it's come into my plant room, but I love how quickly they grow. This is my beautiful quadricolour. Just look at these colours on this beautiful plant. I hope you can see okay. It's absolutely pouring outside. There's no sun. I've got buckets outside collecting rainwater, which is a positive, I guess, from all the rain. But I know that my light isn't that bright, so I hope you can see and appreciate these colours for what they are. Such a beautiful colour. I love the variegation on it. Again, it's got the purple underside. I've had this plant for about a month and already it's had some new growth. It looks beautiful next to my brightness, next to my zebrina, and it just breaks up the colour in here with all the purples and the yellows and the variegation. Love them. And the last one is my Tradescantia zebrina. These plants grew like flowers in my garden in South Africa. And this was the one that I have such a vivid memory of, that I went to take cuttings, put the cuttings in water so it grew roots, and making house plants. Such a fast grower, and just love the colour, love the velvety leaves. This is another one that I give to schools quite often because it's just such an easy, low maintenance plant and such a beautiful colour. I am so chuffed about my Tradescantia, whether they're small, whether they're a little bit leggy, trailing, they just all add such a nice dynamic to my space and a lovely bit of colour. When it comes to light, all of my Tradescantia, except for the one you have seen that are quite leggy and quite faded, they're all in a bright spot. I find if they don't get enough light, they go a bit faded. Let me do a bit of a colour comparison so you can see what I mean. So, this one over here has not had the adequate light that it needs, whereas this one has. And you can see the different colour, and it's a bit faded, whereas the colour here is a little bit more prominent. I always find with Tradescantia, the more light you can give it, the better, brighter the colours are. However, just be careful not to place it into too much bright direct sunshine because these delicate leaves could just scorch. So find your Tradescantia a bright spot. Some morning autumn sun that's direct, that's not so harsh, I find works really well as well. Or if you're lucky enough to have the sun, which we don't have or have had for the last few days. In the autumn and winter, some direct bright sun I find works really well, or some late afternoon sun, but it's the harsh, bright, direct summer sun that could just cause the leaves to scorch on these beautiful plants. So bright spot out of direct sunshine in the summer months. When it comes to watering, I'd like to say it's best to have a consistent watering schedule. However, if you've seen my videos before, you will know that I am not a consistent waterer. I've got so many plants that I have unintentionally become an underwaterer because I just can't always get to my plants in time. If the soil gets too dry, which is what I have found with my Tradescantia before, which is a very common mistake I make with my plants sometimes, if the soil gets too dry, I find the leaves go a little bit crispy. So I've now put my Tradescantia where I see it every day and where I pass every day, just to make sure that I avoid the soil to be too dry. So a sign of underwatering could be dry, crispy leaves, and a sign of overwatering could be that the stems are getting quite rotten and soft in the soil. So even though they are super low maintenance plants, it is always best to underwater a little bit because you don't want the stems to go soggy and rot, but don't let the soil dry out too much and for too long because you will find some crispy leaves. When it comes to soil, I like to mix my own soils together, and I have a little pot here with some soil that I've freshly mixed together for the Tradescantia cutting that I'm going to place in here when I do my experiment. I'll leave an example of what my soil mixture looks like, but I use soil as a base, and in there I add some bark just for some extra drainage and some extra humidity, perlite for some drainage, worm castings for a natural fertilizer, and coco coir, which really aerates the soil and allows the roots of your plant to breathe. Tradescantia roots like to breathe, and adding coco coir to that just makes that soil nice and fluffy and aerated. If you can't find all of those elements, if you use a soil base and add a bit of perlite and maybe a bit of bark, that is sufficient, and that's better than just using the plain soil mixture with nothing added. For me personally, I find if I just use the soil packets with nothing added, that soil is really dense and it just causes the soil to completely clog up in the middle of the pot, which have caused my roots of my plants to just get waterlogged and the plant dies. So that's why I like to add different elements to my soil to make it a nice aerated chunky soil mix to keep my plants happy. Common problems with Tradescantia could be pests. I have in the past found some thrips on my Tradescantia. Thrips could be on the top or the bottom side of your plants. They're little crawlers that you can see crawling around. Little black spots would be thrip poop that they leave behind. So keep an eye out. If you see discoloration, that's not just brown tips on your plants. Keep an eye out for some thrip damage. I've also found spider mites love my Tradescantia as well. So make sure to keep a lookout for some pests that could be attracted to your Tradescantia. Leggy growth that you've seen on my plant could be because it's perhaps not getting the right light. Make sure that it's in a bright spot out of direct sunshine, because some direct sun could just cause the leaves to burn and cause some real crispy leaves on your Tradescantia. Equally, a faded colour could also be because it's not getting enough light. So make sure to find that perfect spot that's not too harsh bright sunlight, but that's bright enough out of direct sun. I'm now going to do a little experiment. I'm going to take 2 cuttings of my Tradescantia. One of those cuttings will go in my propagation vase with some water, and the other cutting is going to go in my pot with some soil. I'd like to see which of those plants come out the healthiest, with the quickest roots, and I want to see if it makes a difference whether it goes into water or whether it goes into soil. I have typically always loved propagating and placing them in water for roots to grow. I love seeing roots growing before placing it into soil. But I'm really curious because so many people are telling me that they just pot up directly into soil, and I just want to see how the plant turns out, if there's any difference in the looks, if there's any difference in root growth, and I think now's the time to do the experiment. So I've got some clean, sharp secateurs here, and I'm going to find a couple of healthy stems, and I'm going to cut underneath a node where the roots will come out from. This is all tangled up. I actually hate cutting this lovely plant because it's got such a lovely trail, but we're going to do an experiment, so I'm going to have to cut. Not too much. Right, I've cut over here. I will remove, oh gosh, I've cut more than I thought. I've got 2 stems. Oh well, that's not a bad thing. So I will remove these bottom leaves. There we go. I think for this one, I'll place this one in the soil, but I won't do it straight away because I'll let that cut heal over first. So this will be my soil experiment, and let's go for my water experiment. And again, I'll find a lovely node where I know the roots will come from. I'm not going to cut too much, just over here. There we go. So equally, I'm going to wait with this cutting, not for long, maybe a few hours or so. And then I'm going to place this in water, but I'm just going to allow that cut to heal over before placing this in my propagation vase. So have a little look on one of my other videos, maybe in a couple of weeks' time. I am going to give you an update on the experiment to see if there's a significant difference from the one that's growing into soil and from the one that's propagating in water. And you never know, I might be swayed to always just propagate my Tradescantia now into soil rather than taking the time to grow new roots first before placing it into soil. I would love to hear if you have any Tradescantia in your collection, and if you do, what variety do you have? I know there are so many different varieties of Tradescantia, and I'm all up for adding more to my collection. So let me know your experience with Tradescantia. Do they grow outside in your garden where you are? I think in the UK it is a little bit too cold in the winter for them to grow. They might survive in the summer for sure, but I can't have these plants in my garden in the winter because they'll just freeze and I won't have any Tradescantia left. But let me know where you are and if you've got Tradescantia growing outside or if you've got Tradescantia plants in your houseplant collection. If you have any questions about these lovely plants that I haven't covered, please let me know in the comments. Or if you've got any other questions about any of your other plants, please also get in touch. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye.